Okay, thank you, friends, for coming and remembering our old colleagues who was in India. And today we are gathering to remember him, not as a memory for his loss, but to remember his courageous work, his service, his words, his covering, his investigative journalist he was. And I see many things of him in myself, being spent most of my life in a war zone, from Jaffna to Libya. We have shared lots of things in common with him in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and in India. So we had a good memory of him, not only as a truth speakers and writers, where he enlightened us with his point of views in the New York Times. And I do miss him today because I believe at this juncture where the world is going crazy in West Asia, where wars is on, where we are lacking the truth of reporting, I think such kind of personalities is lost in the war zone these days because we don't get the truth correctly from those areas. I remember him, and I remember Harry, that he brought to my mind that he joined the New York Times during his tenure here in India. And that was a good things about him to show how human he was and how much he wanted to promote the New York Times in India. I will be remembering him as a president of the Foreign Correspondent Club, and we all in the committee also believe that we had the fame wall of fames. His picture is actually here. You can see it is already on the corridors of the clubs. We have already kept his picture there. And we are going to remember him with planting a tree in the garden. So whenever people comes, we'll remember him as a person, as a human being. I will give the mic to maybe Harry. You would like to come and speak a few words on this before I let my other colleagues on the dais come and speak. Please come. You can join us here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Awad. So I was doing a freelancing work at that time when John Burns was here as the bureau chief of the New York Times. And for 1 year, I worked with him on a freelance basis, and then he offered me that why don't you join as a staff of the New York Times. So this was 1997, July 1997. And then again, I worked with him for 1 more year. So I have my 2 years association with him. And he was an amazing reporter on the ground. And so many stories I know about him, but one I would like to share here. That was a conflict zone. So at one time, I think this was in 2002 or so, he came here when the bureau chief was on leave, and that was the time the situation was eyeball to eyeball on the India-Pakistan border. I think it was 2002 during Atal Bihari Vajpayee government. So and all the foreign correspondents from all over the world, they descended to Kashmir that, oh my God, any moment the war will start, any moment the war will start. We also went there. And then we went to Dawri, which is a border town, very close to the LOC. And there, so because we were late, very late, so that's why the army didn't allow us to come back. They said, no, this is not the time that you cannot move around from this zone. So we will detain you and you will be going tomorrow morning. And then we stayed there in the very nice guest house. And then in the morning, we played golf with the Indian Army officers. And then the lead of the story was that here, in the war zone, we came to see the Indian-Pakistani forces eyeball to eyeball, but I ended up playing golf with the Indian Army officers. And then that was the best lead of the story among all the international coverage of that. So the point here is that he was a kind of person that he will go to the spot, and then he will sense what the story is, right? And then he will gather the material. And so his ground reporting is really, really amazing. The second story on which he got the Pulitzer Award, he was narrating me. So I think the 4 or 5 of them, that was in Afghanistan. And when the Taliban started their regime, right? And at that time, the 4 or 5 of them, so there was some kind of lashing, and there was I think the killing of somebody because of the adultery. So they killed that person in a village field in a kind of a small stadium. And then some of the foreign correspondents, they wanted to go and hear from the first person the account of that family, that how that person was killed. And then when they approached the village, so they were chased away by the village, by the villagers. So everybody came back. And then the John Burns, he made up his mind that I'll go back again. And somewhere very early in the morning, he got up at 3 a.m. and they reached the village about 4:30. At that time, nobody was wake up in the village, and he somehow entered into that house. And by the time he could hear the story for 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and then by the time the villagers learned that somebody has come from outside, he left the village, right? And nobody else came in the morning trip. But he took that extra effort to go to the village, to hear the stories of the villages, and because of that extra effort, that story gave him his second Pulitzer Award. So he used to tell me that this is that extra effort for the reporting, that which I could do in that morning, right? But none of the others, those who came the previous day, they were not interested. Somebody said, no, it's too early to go. Somebody said, no, I'm scared of my safety. But he decided, he took the trouble, he was not worried about his safety, and he did the story, and that story got him his second Pulitzer Award. So that was John Barnes. And he'll always tell me that wherever we go, we should always find out, beside our reporting, we should always find out something to have fun. Something extra which has nothing to do with the reporting. So because he was a British, he was very fond of churches, he was very fond of a cemetery, he was very fond of nice parks or so many other things. So wherever we will go, we'll always find out something or other from the Lonely Planet Guide, and then go to that place either while we are coming back to the hotel or going to the airport. Always find out, there were some occasions when we couldn't do it, but we always find out something which has nothing to do with the reporting, but so that you can remember the place that, oh my God, I had been to that place. So he was purely a reporting journalist who would love to go to the field. And as the difficult situations will be, in the most difficult situations where there is no place to live, there is no place to eat, there is no place to communicate, he will produce the top-class world stories. Top-class stories he will produce from those zones, which are like either a war zone or a natural disaster zone or all those kind of things. So I pay my respect to John Burns. I pay my remembrance to John Burns, and thank you very much, Dr. Awad, for providing this opportunity that the FCC is remembering John Burns. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your nice word and remembering a human who has left a good memory on all of us. And I remember him sometime, even when we were sitting, he would go and have his own way of thinking and come back with some stories. That's his style of, used to be. Venkat, what you would like to add to about our John, please?
Good evening, friends. It is both an honor and a solemn privilege to pay my tribute to a giant of our profession, John Fisher Burns, a British journalist who worked for the New York Times. He died of pneumonia on the outskirts of Cambridgeshire in England on the 12th of this month at the age of 81. In an age when journalism is often hurried, fragmented, and contested, John belonged to a rare tradition, one defined by courage, depth, and an unflinching commitment to truth. For over 4 decades with the New York Times, he reported from some of the most dangerous and defining conflict zones of our time, from Bosnia to Afghanistan, from South Africa to Iraq. His work did not merely chronicle events, it captured the very sweep of history. Twice, the world paused to recognize his extraordinary courage and clarity. He was awarded the Pulitzer Prize twice. First in 1993 for his reporting on the Bosnian War, and again in 1997 for his coverage of Afghanistan under Taliban rule. These were not just accolades, they were affirmation of journalism at its very best. John had a rare gift, the ability to combine the immediacy of frontline reporting with depth of a historian. One of his most memorable dispatches described a lone cellist playing amid the ruins of Sarajevo as shells rained down on a city under siege. In that moment, he showed us not just war, but humanity, fragile, defiant, enduring. He was, as one editor famously described him, the consummate foreign desk fireman, always ready to be deployed at a moment's notice to the world's most troubled places. And yet, behind that readiness was a deeply reflective journalist, one who understood both the power and the responsibility of the written word. His career took him across continents, from Moscow during the Cold War to Beijing, where he was once arrested and accused of espionage for daring to report beyond a permitted boundaries, to New Delhi, where he served as bureau chief for South Asia, and later to Baghdad in Iraq, where his reporting during the Iraq War made him one of the most recognizable voices in global journalism. In Iraq, many of us remember seeing him calm, composed, and authoritative, explaining the chaos of war to a global audience. But what we saw on television, he also used to work for television. What we saw on television was only a fraction of who he was. His colleagues recall a man of immense intellect, strong convictions, and at times fierce independence. He believed passionately in journalism free from ideological constraints. He resisted what he saw as the dangers of dogma, whether imposed by governments or embraced by journalists themselves. And yet, he also had the humility to acknowledge that editors, with what he called the blue pencil, were essential in tempering the excesses of passion. In his later reflections, John spoke of journalism's gold standard, a commitment to fairness, balance, and the courage to follow facts, even when they lead us away from comfortable truths. John warned against the temptation to see journalism as a mission to create a better world, cautioning that such a mindset, however noble, could sometimes cloud judgment. For him, the journalist's duty was clear: to report honestly, rigorously, and without fear or favor. Beyond the bylines and the accolades, there was also a deeply human story. His wife, Jane Scott Long, was his partner in the truest sense. She was also a journalist, helping build and sustain reporting operations in some of the most dangerous environments on earth. Together, they embodied a partnership dedicated to the pursuit of truth. In his final years, John Burns became more reclusive, a quiet contrast to the energetic correspondent who had once traversed war zones and world capitals. But his legacy remained in the stories he told, the standards he upheld, and the generations of journalists he inspired. His last story, fittingly, was about the reburial of King Richard III, a reflection on history, memory, and the passage of time. It was, in many ways, a metaphor for his own work, connecting the past with the present and reminding us that today's news is tomorrow's history. As we remember John Fisher Burns today, especially here in South Asia, in New Delhi, where he used to operate as South Asia Bureau Chief, and a region he knew intimately, we are reminded of what it truly means to be a foreign correspondent. It means bearing witness. It means asking difficult questions. It means standing, often alone, in the face of danger and uncertainty and still choosing to tell the story. John Burns did all this and more. He set a standard not just for excellence but for integrity. And in doing so, he leaves behind not just a body of work but a legacy, one that will continue to guide and inspire journalists around the world. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Venkat. Beautiful word, beautiful remembrance. I think, Simran, you have something to contribute as well for his loss. Please come up here. You can come. You want the mic? Yeah, you can have the mic. Here you go.
Hi. So I didn't know John Burns personally, but we all followed his reporting and his writings. And the little bit personal part that I came to know about him was actually through Hari. Hari told me that he was hired by John Burns here in Delhi, and his initial years of journalism in Delhi were under him. I think for most of us who are foreign correspondents who have reported from various parts of the world, the New York Times reportage on foreign affairs has always been one of the, as Venkat put it, and as a lot of people have put it, the gold standard of journalism. This is something we have all learned through the years. And I was reading about John Burns and his coverage of events in Bosnia, in Afghanistan, in Delhi, in China. And I think the one thing or the one incident that stood out for me was when he was posted in Beijing and he went on his motorbike and he just drove into the depths of China, which he was not allowed to do so. And he was later even arrested for that, and then later he was released by the police. But I think that incident for me was a very striking incident as a journalist, because it brings back to all of us the very basics of journalism, which is that when we are thrown in a situation, we, of course, look at what is presented to us, the optics which are right in front of us, and then the journalist in us has to take over where we go beyond what is expected of us, something even Hari mentioned. I think that is something, sadly, with, I would say, my generation and the coming generation, we are becoming more and more comfortable just sitting in studios or maybe sitting in offices and not going to the field. And even the 2 Pulitzers that John Burns earned was for his reportage on the field. So my homage to him as a journalist would be that we have to remember the basics, which is something he taught us. That is his legacy, which will live with all of us, that go to the field, ask the tough questions, and sometimes go to places where you are not allowed to go, even if you get arrested once in a while. So that's my homage to the journalist and the man. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Secretary Prakash, would you like to add something, please?
Well, unlike many of you, I personally didn't know him. I only have read him. And I think I started reading him those days. That particular paper was coming, the International Herald Tribune, which was combining those days the best of New York Times and of Washington Post. Later, subsequently, I think New York Times acquired it. I think these days New York Times brings out an international edition on that pattern, but that's different. But that is how I was introduced to him, not exactly to him, but to what he was writing. And as all of you, Venkat mentioned, and Simran also said that gold standard of journalism, the New York Times and the international coverage undoubtedly is the best. And here, this gentleman must have been a remarkable character, because I really sometimes wonder how he was a Britisher, though he was born in Britain. I believe his father was a South African. And then when he was in his school, I believe his family migrated to Canada. And in Canada, I think Burns did all his education. And he began his journalism, I think, with that Globe and Mail as a city reporter. And then he started covering the Canadian Parliament or that provincial legislature, I'm not exactly sure. And there perhaps he must have written something, though he was banned by that thing. And then he came to New York Times. Of course, he stayed there nearly for 40 years. And the best part of is this, unlike others, I'm quite sure, unlike his other contemporaries, he did not perhaps want, I'm quite sure, he must have been offered, but he must not have taken that thing. He wanted to be on the ground. He did not become an editor. He always preferred to remain a reporter. And the remarkable aspect of Mr. Burns was this: he has been the bureau chief of Russia, China, India, and Britain. It is a remarkable spate of achievements. No wonder why he got these two Pulitzer Prizes. And my homage to him, and I pray that his soul must be resting in peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody would like to say a few words before we conclude? If anybody would like to say something, feel free. Otherwise, I am just going to end by saying that yes, John was more than a journalist. He was a standard bearer for integrity, curiosity, fearless storytellers. To his colleagues, he was a mentor and a steady presence. To readers, he was a trusted guide through history as it unfolded. Today we mourn his loss, but we also honor his life that helped the world see itself more clearly. May we carry forward his commitment to truth, his depth to compassion, and his belief that journalism at its best can illuminate even the darkest of times. Thank you for coming. May God give him heaven and may his soul rest in peace. Thank you very much.